Welcome to Strange Gossip. I'm Catherine.
And I'm Taylor, and this is going to be like your friend's take on the weird.
Because we're tired of real life problems and want to talk about spooky shit.
Welcome to episode 2.
Woo! Episode 2. This is getting exciting.
I know. No, this is getting real, guys. It's like a second date.
Yes, we've committed. We went to drinks. We decided that we want to commit a little bit further. Maybe this is like going to a movie together. I haven't been in the dating world in a minute. I don't know what people do for a second date.
Same, dude. I have zero clue.
I feel like for me, it was only like in the last couple years did I realize people on Tinder, like their first dates were normally like a quick coffee or like a quick drink. Like I assumed first dates were still like going to a movie, like dinner and a movie. But then all of my single friends were like, no, absolutely not. You do not know what you're getting into. It has to be like 20 minutes, 30 minutes top. And that like blew my mind.
Oh, really? I feel like you don't get to know someone enough in that amount of time.
Yeah, I guess it's maybe just like a screening. It's like
something.
Like, did you catfish me? Let's do the first 30 minutes. But yeah.
Just see you in real life.
You can tell we've just been relationship people our whole lives by
yeah, no, serial dater
our
here.
lack of what the kids are doing. Oh my gosh. How
I know.
old. Well, thank you guys for deciding to commit and be with us on our second date here.
Yes, no, we're super excited to take you out. Today, we're going to go on a date around the paranormal because everybody likes to talk ghost stories on your second date. Come on.
Come on. We would.
Keep them interested. Keep them running. I don't know.
Who will listen to your good spooky story? That's a great, if you're dating. Yeah. If you're dating someone new, how soon would you bring up your interest in the paranormal?
That's a good question. I think I let the paranormal happen to Trent. And then I was like, yeah, so like, I believe in this shit.
Oh.
And he's like, got it. I see why. So I don't know, maybe that, yeah, that's a tricky one. Do you discuss aliens or paranormal first? I think aliens is an easier intro to it.
Yeah, I feel like aliens is a little bit more fun. Like if you were like, let's talk about Bigfoot, it feels like it would be a little bit more like, I don't know, like fun topic of conversation. Yeah, before you maybe dive into ghosts. But I don't know. I feel like, I've been with my husband forever now. And I feel like I couldn't tell you like when, I was 18 and I feel like I was trying to be really, really cool at that time. So I probably wouldn't have geeked out on paranormal stories.
See, that's why I think like the 30-year-olds are probably not. That's why the coffee date happens. They got to cut themselves off.
So true.
Or maybe they're just not as weird as us, but I don't.
There's that too.
It's a possibility.
I feel like if like I were to meet my husband today and we were just about to date today, I feel like paranormal and spooky stuff would come up pretty quick. I feel like the
100%.
Conversation would come up pretty quickly.
We have a podcast about it now. You know what I mean?
So this is about to be, I actually was at a party over the weekend and I'm not kidding. I was introduced to someone by the girl that has a podcast about spooky stuff.
I love that.
And I was like, and they're like, you should talk to Catherine about aliens. She has a podcast with her friend about this stuff. And I was like, is this my new defining characteristic?
It's the calling. Yeah, no, it's the universe being like, yeah, she's the alien girl.
Yeah, talk to her about aliens. And I was like so flattered. I felt so seen in that moment. I was like, thank you. I want that intro forever.
It's beautiful.
All right, Taylor, let's start to get into it. Do you have any weird stories of what's going on? Any current events you want to talk about?
Do I? Okay, so it's actually about the same topic we're about to get into on my side. Ooh. But as I started researching, I'm just going to tell you what it is. I've been researching the Hat Man. We're going to go over my experience about that a little bit later. But that was like one of my worst paranormal experiences in my entire life back in college. So I was kind of like a little bit weirded out, like bringing all of that back up and then like really diving into it. So I was doing all this research on the Hat Man. Not a lot. I'll tell you, it was like 5 fucking minutes and I had to cut it off because I was like, I'm getting the heebie-jeebies. I can't do it. 2 nights later, I was asleep. I went to bed probably around 10 and then I woke up. It was 12:30 and I was just staring down our hallway because something was giving me a weird, like I felt like I was being watched. So I'm staring down this hallway. I woke up out of nowhere, just kind of looking down, zoning out. I swear I see a shadow like the Hat Man, right? Like it popped in and then popped out. And so I'm like, I'm going to get under the covers. The second that happened, Kavika, my dog, was sleeping in the living room on the complete opposite side of the house. And I have like a pretty big house. Like he wouldn't have been able to hear, there was no noise anyway, but he wouldn't have been able to hear it if there was. He just starts freaking out barking, like loudest bark I've ever heard, traumatized clearly, comes running to us on our side, starts barking down the fucking hallway for, I kid you not, an hour. An hour. I woke Trent up. I'm like, you got to walk around the house. He's like, this dog is like freaked out, like more freaked out than I've ever seen him. And I was like, yeah, so I don't want to sound like a crazy person, but I did see a shadow in the hallway.
Oh,
He's like, you need to stop bringing that shit in the house. Listen.
Oh my God. Wait, that's actually so scary though.
It's so unnerving. And like, honestly, I've been on edge like ever since. So truthfully, like the amount of research I'm actually was able to do on this topic today, because I thought I was going to like deep dive into it and like really get to the bottom of this thing. I couldn't. So a lot of it's going to just be like my experience, other like general, like the 10 minutes I could dive into it kind of info. But yeah, I feel like he's made a reappearance and I don't want to feed into it. So I told him to get the fuck out of my house. And then Trent and I had a sage date.
I love that. I mean, nothing is more romantic than saging your house with your partner. I'm so 100%. Into that. But that bonding,
he was like,
it's everything.
The first thing he said is like, we're saging the house. And then he pulls out, we have a big old sage stick and I have like the little one. We walk around, we sage the house, and then we cook dinner. I tell Trent there's a demon in the house and he's like, whipping out the sage. There's a certain way to do this. You have to do it in the corners. Cheers. You have to do it in the corners and you're supposed to open windows so they have somewhere to leave from. But fuck it, we're just gonna sage.
I'm so into that. I mean, I hate that happened and that's so scary. Like, I'm so sorry that that was, going on. I feel like this is going to be good to kind of talk through and then we can close this chapter and we'll move on to the next topic.
Yeah, no, the Hat Man's getting no extra love from me.
The fact that, you've had previous experience and I can't wait to dive in more and hear more because this is paranormal, like, would you even call him a cryptid, more of like a ghostly presence? Like
no, so some people say he's a demon.
Ooh.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, it's very like, I haven't had a lot of recent paranormal experiences like that. That was like one of the bigger ones that I've had in like many, many years. So I just thought it was crazy that of course it happens. We start this podcast, I research something and it comes up. That's just so weird. The timing is just weird. But yeah, no, we'll get into what the origin is because there's a couple of different theories about where it comes from, but it's not comfy.
I'm excited, but I'm also excited for you to close that chapter.
100%.
Share
man better
with
not
us.
show up today. But close the book. You can leave.
That is wild. Well, I'm excited to dive into that. I mean, talk about current event. I can't quite keep up with that, but I will say one thing that's really funny that's happening right now on a lighter note is that my dad called me today and he was like wanting to get something for David for his birthday. And
cute.
He was like, I always put my dad on speaker. It just goes without saying. And so he literally was like, am I on speaker? Like, he doesn't even say hello. He just goes, am I on speaker? And I was like, yes. And and then there was a pause. And then I was like, but David's not here if this happens to do with David. And he goes, okay, great. He's like, I think I found David the most ultimate birthday present, but I want your opinion on it. And I was like, okay, like, what's going on? Like, what do you think? And he's like, I got the little device that lets you know when there's like currents and like electromagnetic things for ghost hunting.
I love those.
I was like,
an EMF reader, right?
Yes, there it is. I was like, I couldn't remember the terminology at all. I do not know anything about that specifically or that world, like when it comes to the technology and things like that. Yeah. And I was like busting up laughing. I was like, Dad, I'm gonna be very honest. I'm probably gonna use this more than David, but and he was like, no, that's great. You guys can share it. But he was very, very excited about it. So who knows?
I love
Maybe
that.
you and I will like partner up and go to somewhere and bring it because now we'll have equipment.
That's so nice.
I just love that my dad was like, what's a good gift for a son-in-law? And he went full on like
ghost equipment.
Ghost hunting equipment. Also, I just want to give a quick warning in this podcast. I am getting over a cold. You can probably hear it a little bit in my voice. So it's a summer bug. Thankfully, nothing too serious. But if you hear me cough or like clear my throat a little bit, sorry.
It's not a demon.
It's not a demon. I'm not being taken over. It's just a cold.
Yeah, nope. And I made sure she wanted to record too. I'm not forcing her. So she's here thriving,
yes,
ready to go.
Yes. I'm trying to get this done. But yeah, good friend.
Yeah,
good friend.
no.
Taylor did not force me to do this.
I was like, you good? You sure?
All right. Well, actually, on that note, I think I'm going to go first since you went first last week. And hopefully I can get through this without losing my voice. So
I'm so excited to hear.
All right. So the theme of this week is ghosts and paranormal. So last week, of course, we covered aliens. So now we're going to deep dive into some ghost stories, obviously. Taylor brought up about what she'll be talking about today, but I'm going to dive into something that I have a bit of a passion for. I can't believe it's episode 2 and I'm already kind of like diving into this little obsession I have, but I love it. Haunted castles. I don't know. There's something about a castle that already just sounds so grand and historic, but like throw in ghost stories and like spooky lore, and that's just checks all my boxes. Like
it's like ghost fantasy. Like we love it. European ghost hunters. Come on.
Yes, exactly. And today I'm going to discuss the magical Alnwick Castle. And I say magical because it's also one of the main filming locations for the first couple of Harry Potter movies.
I didn't know that. Cool.
A little bit of fun facts. If you remember in the first movie, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, where they learn how to fly broomsticks, or like when he's like learning the rules about Quidditch.
I vividly remember that.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like every millennial does, right? I feel like it's like, even if you're not the biggest like Potterhead, I think like culturally, like, yes. Harry Potter was our thing. And so those exteriors is at Alnwick Castle.
Oh.
Which is really, really cool. Beyond Harry Potter, it's also a filming location for Downton Abbey, Transformers, and my personal favorite, Antiques Roadshow. I'm an antique girl, so it's very incredible. Yes. Located in the English county of Northumberland, the first parts of the castle were built around 1096 for the Baron of Alnwick. So we're talking long time.
It's old.
It is old. Today, it is home to the 12th Duke and Duchess of the Percy family, who have owned this castle for over 700 years. Could you imagine, like, your family living there for... It's just, like, astounding.
Like you inherit a castle? That's cool.
Yeah. That, like, your great... I know. Must be nice. And it's beautiful. And it's a big tourist attraction. It's called the Windsor of the North.
Oh.
When you have so many years of history, you're bound to have a couple spooky stories. Are you ready to hear a couple?
Oh, I'm so ready.
Ooh. The first, we have the Gray Lady. Well, actually, first, do you spell gray Grey or Gray?
Oh my God. I literally thought about this the other day. So I used to drive a gray truck.
Okay.
And I always like the Grey. Also, I spelled it for when I posted my gray millennial couch. And I was like, oh my God, how do you spell gray? I looked it up. Apparently, Gray is the American spelling and Grey is UK. And I'm like, I'm a UK girly then, because it's EY all day for me.
Same. That's so funny. And you nailed it. Exactly that. Gray is apparently the American version, but I also say Grey.
Right? Maybe it's like I don't, okay. This is like so off topic, and I'm sorry if this is like totally derailing you. But
no, I knew this would come up. I knew this would be good.
At Lahaina Luna, when we were going to high school, I had driven off the property to get lunch, and apparently that's a no-no. Security guard writes me a ticket, and he writes gray, Gray, and I was like, it's a gray truck. And I'm like trying to like be past and he's like, yeah, dude, like what? He's like, that's what I wrote. I'm like, no, it's not. You're spelling it wrong. And he's like, okay, dude. Go back to class.
That's hilarious. Also, really good technique to trip him up. You're like, no, you spelt it wrong. Ignore the part where I left campus.
I know. No, it's like, that's not the description of my car. It's spelt wrong. And he's like, sorry, girl.
That's so funny. So I was actually starting to think it was a Hawaii thing. I was like, maybe in Hawaii, like Grey, but if he spelled it Gray.
Well, yeah. Maybe it's just us.
So maybe it is just, maybe we just thought we were very English. We were like very feeling our UK.
We're just very proper.
Well,
it's these ghosts coming through us. They're like, They're channeling.
Well,
they're channeling the gray.
I love it. I Googled Grey Hawaii, and Maui Gyms online spells their sunglasses Grey. So I'm sticking a little bit to some Hawaii culture thing.
But Maui Gyms manufactures their stuff. I think not in the UK, but in Europe, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, well then there goes the whole Hawaii connection.
Yeah, dude.
I love that we though both are Grey girlies.
Yeah, but why are we so invested? Like, I feel like most people have just don't even think about it.
Oh, but it is. That's the new party, getting to know people. The icebreaker is, are you a Grey or are you a Gray? And why? That's the new thing. Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
Anyway,
all right.
We are less here for the gray debate and more here for the gray lady. So let's get back to the spooky stuff. Okay. So have you ever heard of the gray lady or the lore of the gray lady?
I feel like I've heard a lot about the white lady. It's always a white lady. And so gray, I haven't heard of.
It's so funny you say that. You could so tell we grew up together because I also immediately thought of the white lady legend in Hawaii, who's actually Pele. And just a full disclosure for anyone listening, if you're ever in Hawaii and a woman with long white hair is seen hitchhiking, you have to pick her up and don't look at her in the eyes. We'll cover that on another podcast.
That's a whole thing.
PSA for the podcast listeners. Also, I'd never heard of the Grey Lady, but of course heard of the White Lady legend. But there are Grey Lady legends all across England, but at Alnwick Castle, out of all the ghost encounters people have witnessed throughout the years, the Grey Lady is by far the most spotted.
Oh.
So visitors have claimed to see a gray lady within the castle, primarily in the castle's underground tunnels. There's something about underground tunnels that kind of makes me...
I don't know what they're preparing for down there.
Spooky.
Yeah.
Besides getting a glance at her ghostly appearance, visitors have claimed to hear her wails of anguish echoing through the tunnels and within the castle walls. Now, Taylor, would you, ever go into a haunted castle?
100%. Without a question.
During the day or night or both?
I do both.
Ooh, I love this. See, this is where we're going to have to do a trip component.
I know.
And 2, would you continue on in the haunted tunnels if you heard wails of anguish?
Absolutely not. I would be out of there. That would be a no.
That's a hard pass for me. If I'm walking and I'm at the door of the tunnels and I just hear wails of anguish, I'm out. That's it. No. That's it. I'm out. Peace out.
Yeah, catch me outside. Yeah. That's not happening.
Not happening. So the legend is that the Grey Lady is believed to be a teenage girl who was working as a maid at the castle during the Victorian era, sometime between 1837 and 1901. I'll be honest, anytime I picture a ghost, I assume they're from the Victorian era. There's something about that time frame. I'm not picturing a modern ghost. I am kind of still picturing that very cliche, long tattered dress, dark hair.
Her name's Elizabeth. Yeah.
Yes. I'm not picturing someone modern day. No, it's just not happening. So anyway, the story goes, while working in the kitchen one day, she accidentally fell down a chute to the tunnels below. It's been said that the dumbwaiter for raising food between levels broke and fell on top of her, crushing her to death.
Rough.
When her coworkers noticed she was missing, they searched all across the castle for her with no luck. Unfortunately, by the time they searched the tunnel that she had fallen into, it was too late. Now the Grey Lady haunts Alnwick Castle, and most ghostly encounters with visitors have been with her.
Interesting.
Not a great way to go.
It's not great, but is it... yeah, I guess if I were to die by something falling on me, that would be considered tragic.
Yeah.
I was about to be is it tragic? And then I'm actually, now that I think about it, that is kind of tragic.
That's so funny. That's the new catchphrase of this podcast. Is it tragic?
Is it tragic or no?
It's bad, but is it tragic?
I know. Is it haunt worthy? Is it worth your afterlife to just haunt the castle because you got smushed?
That's a great, we're going to have to go and ask her ourselves.
Does she think someone did it and that's why she's pissed? Anyway, there's lots of questions we have for her. We're gonna have to interview her.
Well, now we're gonna have the new ghost equipment that my dad got David that we'll be able to take with us to ask her these questions. Oh my God. Because it's true, like, how much am I committed to haunting? Like, I personally, like, if I died in a tragic accident, like, I don't know how much, like, vengeance I'd have beyond, like, this sucked. Like, this was shitty, but, like, no one else's fault versus, like, I'm going to haunt people. I don't know. It's a good question.
I'm a lazy girl, so I could just imagine in the afterlife, I'm just like...
Too much effort.
An occasional, like, slam the door, and then I'm like, you're not going to see me for the next 5 years.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, after, like, maybe, like, a little bit of haunting, I'd be like, I'm kind of tired. Like, this was fun for, like, a hot second. But, like, yeah, you'd get over it pretty quickly. But she was also a teenager. And teenagers have more stamina.
Angsty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And more, like, you can hold on to more things when you're a teenager. Dead or alive.
She's got something to prove.
Yeah.
Something to prove. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the legend of the Gray Lady. Now I'm going to take you into another story, by far the most popular story from a Nick Castle. And it's not a ghost, but a vampire.
Oh, interesting. Okay, Edward.
A full-on vampire is coming out of this place. As the legend goes, in the 11th century, a servant of the Lord of a Nick Castle had suspected his wife of having an affair. He was furious and desperate to catch her in the act, so he did what all jealous lovers do and made a plan to spy on her.
Typical.
He climbed onto the roof of their house to stake out, but unfortunately his roof wasn't strong enough to hold him, and he fell through it, fatally injuring himself. Now, just before taking his final breath, he cursed his wife. And as time passed, the villagers of Alnwick started spotting him wandering through the town at night. When they would approach him, they noticed the appalling stench of death that surrounded him.
Gross.
So gross. That'd be, pass, hard pass. And a plague fell on the villagers, and they immediately connected it to the sightings of the man. Villagers started dying, and out of panic, other villagers stopped going outside once the sun set. So not good. Not a fun time for this.
Hi.
The situation was out of control, so the local priest decided to gather a party of brave souls to go and dig up the man's grave to see what was really going on. Although the man had been buried 6 feet underground, they found him almost at the surface with barely a light covering of soil on top of him. The same stench of death was overwhelming, yet his body looked lively, his complexion almost pink in color. They also noted his body looked swollen. He was bigger than he was in life. Afraid of any more damage he would cause the villagers, they took their spades and began to cut him into pieces. Immediately, out of him flowed gallons of fresh blood.
Okay.
In horror, I love that you're like, and okay.
You should just see my facial expressions throughout this whole thing.
And to pass. I want a montage of your... In horror and not sure what to do, they took what remained of his body and burned it on the grounds of Alnwick Castle, making sure nothing remained and he wouldn't return to stalk the night. From that day on, no one saw him again in the town, and the mysterious plague had vanished. It's a great story, but what's even more fascinating is that it's recorded by a medieval historian in the late 12th century as history of the area. The author used the term bloodsucker to describe the man in his account of the tale, which was the first recorded use of that word in English, or in England.
I love that. No, okay, but that was my thing. Is it like, is this the first accounted? Is that the dog?
And they hate vampires.
Fuck the vampires.
Come here, babies. They're like,
is that? They're like, I'm out. Get me away. But is that the first reported vampire?
Well, so there's multiple types of vampire, and I hope to kind of get into it on another episode, specifically about where vampires come from, because the word vampire in English actually doesn't show up until the 18th century. So we're talking hundreds and hundreds of years before that, but this is kind of the first English case of a bloodsucker. And, you know, whether that be, I mean, if you look back at this, and I've kind of done a little digging into this, he kind of gave more of a modern day description of a zombie versus vampire. Like there wasn't any like charming or alluring, you know, he smelled like death. Like there wasn't really like the same thing we see, but he was filled with blood, and it's assumed that he did take blood from the living. So it's kind of a fascinating thing because he's kind of like part ghost, part zombie, part vampire. And we really just didn't have the lingo or the language of the day. And I think it's really, really fascinating that this kind of came out of like a medieval historian's book, not so much like a passed on story. So that's the legend of the Alnwick vampire. And that's what I have for you today.
That was great. Thank you. That's interesting. I'm wondering if they ever like actually like looked into the bodies and like they were drained of blood. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's what's kind of like, you know, lost to time. Like there is a lot on, we have like the text, the historical text of kind of what was, but one, the kind of language they used then versus now is kind of hard to decipher already.
Yeah.
And two, we're talking so long ago, like a story that's written in the 12th century about the 11th century when we're in 2023. It's just kind of like mind blowing. But I just loved it. I mean, I loved both. I mean, anything about a castle, and so many castles are haunted because you just have so much time and history. But I think what really stood out about this one is, yes, we have ghost stories, but we also have kind of this lore and this legend about, I don't think a vampire is a cryptid. I think a vampire is more so like it's its own category almost. Exactly. It is kind of like, but to have it in a historical text, I think is really cool and fascinating.
No, that's definitely interesting. Okay. Well, actually, what's kind of weird, I'm going to get into it with the Hat Man, but he's been reported for many, many years. So
we got a lot of history going on today.
Listen, we're not breathing life into you, Mr. Hat Man. If you're listening to this, you're not welcome in my house. I'm talking about you, but I don't want you. Okay. So I'm just going to make that clear. Do not bother me tonight. I will be pissed.
And I'm listening, but you're not also welcome here. Full disclosure.
Don't even come through the Zoom. Don't even think about it, sir.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
All right.
Keep an eye out on my background for me because it's giving me the heebie-jeebies. So anyway, so the Hat Man. He's actually become more of like a TikTok phenomenon recently, which I thought was weird. And they really talk about him just recently has been coming up about like Benadryl. Like if you take a bunch of Benadryl, you got an appointment with the Hat Man, that kind of thing. It's very interesting. So TikTok has grasped the Hat Man. So if you ever want to go down like a TikTok rabbit hole, I don't recommend, but if you're interested, you do you. Take your chances. But he's actually been talked about for many, many years. So sightings have actually dated back to the beginning of written record. Girl. Sorry.
Okay, what? I thought my story was old. Go on.
But I'm like, here's the thing. I haven't like been able to like actually verify that it's like the same thing because again, written record back then is they're using different words. It's different things. So I'm wondering if it's like shadow people have been reported.
But I already don't feel comfy.
Researched, I know. From what I've researched, the Hat Man has been reported. So some report that the Hat Man wears a top hat and a trench coat. Others say he wears a fedora and a trench coat. And what's interesting is we're going to get into two different experiences. One about my experience, one about my mom's. And we both have she's seen the fedora, I've seen the top hat. So not cool. Anyway. But he's always, always, always wearing a trench coat. So while some say the Hat Man is a hallucination, others think that he's a demon. So there's a lot of different thoughts about what he can be, actually to the point of UFOologists have their own take on it. And they think that it's like the sighting of him could be a visit from an alien species. I don't know about that. I think that's a little bit of a reach, but I did think it was funny. I was
love
like,
it.
oh, interesting.
I mean, it connects to our world. We love it. I mean, give me every every solution.
I would like to think that I'm being visited by aliens. Do I think I'm being visited by aliens with this Hat Man? No, he's giving me a different vibe. But so also on that same line of like thought of like what this thing is, a kind of fun fact is the filmmaker Wes Craven actually was inspired by this phenomenon when creating Freddy Krueger, the character. Yeah.
Why?
Because Freddy Krueger comes to you in your dreams. There's all this talk about the Hat Man coming in with sleep paralysis and insomnia.
Which is spot on for that character.
Yeah, so definitely interesting. Some had said they actually bumped into the Hat Man, like into the figure itself, and it's definitely more solid than like your typical ghost. Like it's basically like a dude just standing there, and some people have reported actually like physically running into him, and so he's like very solid.
No, thank you.
There are also reports that he usually appears after a traumatic experience, so suggesting that there might be some type of like significant spiritual or emotional factor to him. So that's a thought. However, the most common feeling when seeing the Hat Man is just pure terror. Like, it's very uncomfortable. It's very like, it kind of just takes your breath away kind of feeling. And that's like the most reported thing.
Kind of leans into your like, what?
It's a garbage truck. That's how fucking freaked out I am. For those of you that are just listening, I had to pause and just like, I was hearing something. And I think you could maybe pick it up in this, but
like I saw like shadows behind you in that corner.
Stop.
But like at the top corner, but I was like, that has to be a car, like a car coming by. And then when you said
There's
garbage truck, I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Okay.
Like I have a faint light flickering in my second camera, but that's because it's an old light fixture.
Okay. But this is how jumpy I was, like researching this stuff. Like, are you good? Seriously though, I was literally researching that, like taking down the bullet points, and I was watching American Psycho because I just read the book, which by the way, terrible book, hated it. But I was watching the movie because of course you have to. And they clanked glasses, like cheers to each other, and I fucking jumped out of my skin. I was like, oh, and I was like, this is when I'm gonna call it quits.
Yeah.
But I'll get into my story with the Hat Man because it's one of the scariest paranormal experiences I've ever had in my life. So we're taking it back to Arizona, 2014. I am in college and I'm at my apartment, and we share my apartment with my then boyfriend, Chad, and then our roommate, Jamal, and then his brother. Sorry, not Jamal's brother, Chad's brother, Corey. So there's a lot of like dudes in the house. We have a little Rottweiler, and we're in the living room, and the dog, Connor, starts playing with an orb. And like, I'm into ghosts at this point. So I'm like, that's like a little weird. I'm like, does anybody see the dog just like chasing, like, it looks like a speck of dust, but it's a little bit bigger. And like, Jamal's like, yeah, that's weird. I'm like, okay, whatever. Try to like write it off. Go to the bathroom. I'm in the bathroom, and the bathroom starts like shaking, like we're having an earthquake, but it's only in the bathroom. So it's like, you know what? We're going to go for a walk. Who wants to come? Corey was at work, so it was Jamal and Chad and I and Connor the dog. And we're all like, let's just get out of here. You know, nothing like super creepy was happening, but it was just like a little weird. So we start walking the dog, and Jamal is like, does anybody else see that? And I'm like, oh, the thing standing under the tree. Yeah, I do. And I didn't know what the Hat Man was at this point. So Jamal informs me that he thinks that the Hat Man is a demon. He explains him. I'm like, that's really bizarre because I'm literally seeing that thing under the tree. Mind you, it's kind of like, it's a little bit past dusk. Like the sun has set, and it's still like that little light, like it's like that indigo color in the sky. So it's like you can see, but it's not like super clear. So I was like, okay, that's very bizarre. So we start walking, and I'm like, I'm going to test Jamal. I'm like, Jamal, tell me where you see him so I could just double check, because this thing kept moving. And I was like, oh, like, where do you see him now? And he's like, oh, by that cactus. And I'm like, yep. And so we started testing each other. Chad did not see it. He was like, I don't see what the hell you guys are talking about. But every time it moved while we were walking, there would be a puddle of water. Like, it looked like he was drenched in water. And so every time we would walk past a place that he was always about 10 feet in front of us and kept moving. there would be a puddle of water. And Chad saw the puddle of water, but he never saw the figure that Jamal and I were seeing.
Oh my gosh, that's
and
so
we were
scary.
just going back and forth, and it was just like spot on, like saw it in the same place every time. It was not, there was like no way that we could have like tricked each other into it, because we were asking questions like opposite ways, whatever we could do to like validate each other.
Of course.
And it was just like very like, okay. So we turn a corner, because I'm over it at this point. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go hang out with the orb. I would rather not do this.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, we're making a U-turn. We're going to go back down this neighborhood that led to kind of like our apartments. And so we turn the corner, and literally like there was like big, tall, like street lights. It went out. And then I heard the most ungodly growl come from like under the earth. It was the loudest, like the world opened up growl. I've been dropped to the floor. Jamal and Chad start taking off with the dog. I'm on the floor, just like couldn't even move. I was just so like traumatized, dropped to the floor, couldn't handle it. And like, this is a neighborhood. I'm like, did anybody else hear this shit?
Yeah,
like nobody's coming out of their house.
Sourced? Yeah.
Yeah. And like the light then again came back on, and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna fuck out of here. So I start running towards the guys, and they're like, absolutely not. We need to go. So that happened. And then we walked back up towards the house, and we were living on the second story of the apartments. And when we walked back, I'm like, Jamal, like, do you see it? And he's like, yeah, it's standing on our porch, like on our patio.
Nope.
Drenched, like just drenched. And mind you, it was not raining like at all. And like, you could see so vividly see the hat, so vividly see the trench coat, all black, like dark as night. Like
could you
couldn't
make out
see
like,
through it.
Could you make out any features, or
No,
really
it was just a black, it's just like a black face. Wow. It's just like the darkest, like if you look at anything black, like that's how black it is. And that's when, that's like how you see it. So that's fine. We were all freaked out, but nothing else happened that night. A few weeks later, though, I had the worst flu, which is kind of weird that you're sick right now, but we're going to ignore it. I had the worst flu of my life.
God, don't say that.
I thought I was going to die. Like, I was like bedridden. It was really bad. Like worse. That's the worst I've ever been sick. But I went to sleep. And mind you, I don't take medicine when I'm sick. I'm one of those people that is like, I won't take medicine for a headache. I won't take any, like now I do a little bit, but like back then I was like, absolutely not, don't want to take it. So I'm alone in the house. It's kind of like mid-morning, I guess, but I'm like sleeping in. It's probably like 11. I remember what I thought was waking up and looking around the room, and I can see the light coming in through like the blinds, and like the room just looked kind of still, and it was kind of quiet. And I was like, wow, this is like a really weird, it felt like almost like a little bit dreamlike, but kind of like normal. Like it's my room, right? Like it's just quiet because nobody's in the house, blah, blah. I start getting thrown around the room, like there's nothing that I can see that's touching me, but I'm like getting thrown across the room, breaking my arms, my ribs, like just getting the shit beat out of me. Like,
oh my God, Taylor.
And I was like, I've got to be dreaming. Like, I've got to be dreaming. I need to wake up. Like, I need to wake up. And you know how you like keep telling yourself to wake up?
Yes.
Could not wake up. Just kept getting beat up, like thrown on the ceiling, on the ground, on the wall. Like, it was crazy. I finally wake up. And I open my eyes, and the room looks the exact same. Like, same light coming through the freaking blinds, same everything. Like, it literally felt the same, looked the same. It was as if I was looking through, like, the same, like, it was the same room.
Wow.
That just happened to me. So I don't know if, like, my eyes were open and I was going through sleep paralysis or what, but I was literally getting tossed across the room, like, craziest thing.
God, and also so violently, too.
It
like,
was
that is
so violent. Like, bones breaking. Like, it was, and then just like wake up in the same spot and look and I'm like, am I gonna get tossed against the wall?
Yeah, like, where is this? Am I in a trap? Like, is this
you
the same
never
thing?
really feel like you came out of a dream, because you're like, is this continuation of the dream? Like,
For
whatever.
sure.
So that was the craziest sleep paralysis experience I've had in my entire life. I've never had one since then.
Wow.
And
that was gonna be my follow-up question was, have you had something like this before? Or like after?
No, but I will tell you, when I saw the freaking Hat Man a few days ago, when I was researching this, I slept on my stomach. I'm like, yeah, right. You can't sleep paralysis me on my stomach. But yeah, so crazy story, right? That was my whole thing with him.
Terrifying.
I never had another experience with him. So I don't know, he just kind of disappeared. But 2 years ago, I was talking ghost stories with my mom, which we don't usually do because my mom is definitely not the type of person to like be a super big ghost believer, right? Like she's usually like, oh, you're like kind of crazy. Like she's like, she thinks I'm weird. So we're sitting at dinner. I think this was like Thanksgiving or something, but I'm sitting at dinner with my mom and I'm like, you have any good ghost stories? And she tells me, she's like, when I was 9 years old, at the end of my bed, I saw a man in a trench coat and a fedora, and it was the most terrified I've ever been. He was so vivid. Like, it looked like a person. She said she pulled the covers over her face and, like, was just, like, wishing he would go away, and he finally did. And she's like, that was a ghost. Oh. And I was like, Mom, have you ever heard of the Hat Man? And she was like, to be honest with you, I did not. Like, I would have went back and got more details of this story for this podcast, but I do not want to break that into her life, or I just don't want to talk about this thing ever again. Close. Yeah, it's too close. It's too weird. And then when I was telling my friend about this podcast that I was gonna talk about the Hat Man, she's like, "Isn't it generational?" And I was like, "Excuse me?" She's like, "Yeah, like isn't the Hat Man like generational, like trauma, like generational trauma? Like it'll usually come to like multiple people in the family." So that was that.
Oh my gosh, that's wild.
And we never, like, she didn't know about who the Hat Man was until I told her. And you
also didn't, until your friend had it. Like,
exactly.
Like, do you feel comfortable sharing, like, in general, like, what kind of things attract him? Like, is it kind of,
just, like very traumatic experiences. So, like, you're thinking, like, childhood traumatic experiences, like assault, things like that. Or just anything that is kind of like someone dies, things like that like a child probably shouldn't be exposed to.
Got it. Because I've heard that, like, in demons, like with, I know we're hoping that that's not obviously where this is coming from. I'm going to lean into the aliens and let that ride. But, like, in a lot of, like, spirituality, when you're talking about demons, they come to you when you are the weakest. So
absolutely,
it completely makes sense in that way. And then the generational thing, that's wild.
That's why, like, when he came around this last time, I was like, I'm in a good spot right now. I'm strong. There is no weakness for you to take advantage of right now. You need to leave.
For sure.
And it's just weird. Like, the last few weeks, like, I kid you not, because I looked into this maybe, like, it's been about maybe 2 weeks or so, maybe a week. But I was cleaning my carpets in the freaking hallway that I saw him in, because I got the little green Bissell thing from Amazon Prime Day. And I'm like,
ooh, love Prime Day.
Ain't no Hat Man going to stop me from getting a good Prime deal and cleaning my carpet. So I'm, like, sitting there cleaning it, just, like... And the whole time I was just thinking, like, I'm strong. Like, you can't bother me. Like, get away from me. I'm going to clean my carpet. Because you almost have to, like, come at these things like, I'm not going to believe in you. I'm not going to breathe into you. I'm not going to deal with you. You're not real. You need to leave.
Yeah.
So that's that.
And we love a Prime deal. We love a Prime deal.
You got to get on the Prime deals.
Maybe
I sucked them out of the carpet.
Sucks up.
Oh my God.
Sucks up dirt, sucks up demons. Oh
my
gosh. You low-key became a Ghostbuster. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So
that review. That's
I know. But yeah, starting off strong with, like, the craziest paranormal experiences. I mean, there was a time, this is just a different type of experience, but I did have a ghost pee in my bed. And I don't want people to think that I'm just, like, some weird, like, oh, I'm, like, the weird paranormal girl. Like, listen, it doesn't happen that often, but I swear to God, the Hat Man and the ghost that peed in my bed are just...
We're going to need you to go into that, too, at some point.
I'll cover that.
That has to be a
Trent
whole...
almost broke up with my ass. He was like, are you good? But he was there. He's can't tell me it wasn't.
That is so... Yeah, and we have, like, theories about that, too. I know we've talked about, like, we definitely have to get into that one. But, something you mentioned in the original Hat Man story that stands out to me is that growl, that, like, guttural growl noise, because I don't know if I should share it now or on another episode, but I have a story of a paranormal experience in downtown San Diego where there was a deep growl and I couldn't place it, couldn't put it. Like, there was no pipes there, like, nothing. And it was... actually, I'll share it because it's really not a long enough story to cover on the pod.
Oh, I'm excited. Yeah.
But buckle in. So,
hey.
there's this area of San Diego, obviously you'll know it very well, is Gaslamp.
Yeah.
It's the downtown area quarter. And, you know, a friend of ours had tickets to the Padres, and we were like, oh, we should make a weekend out of it and go down. And, you know, it's like a 2.5, 3, well, depends in traffic from LA to San Diego.
That's a valid point.
Could be forever, could be not so bad, but we decided to just make a quick weekend. I think we only stayed a night just to go watch the Padres game and then come back up to LA. And I found this like cute little like boutique-y hotel, and like, you know me, like I'm so into like vintage antiques, like the eclectic experience, if you will. I can't not at my hipster roots. But it was just a super cute hotel in Gaslamp, and I was like, oh, we should go here. Like it looks so like cute. And then we get there, and like the feeling is like a little off. We were like, okay, like it's really cute, but like the feeling's just kind of weird. And we check into our room, and then my husband and I start having kind of like tension between us. Like we just start getting like weird, like, and we hadn't been this whole time, but then like after check-in, we were just getting it, and we're like, oh, it's probably travel, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Then we go to the baseball game, have a great time. Like we're at the baseball game, everything's back to being fine. We go out to Gaslamp afterwards, just to like have a couple, like we just went out to like the different bars and whatnot with our friends. It's a great night. And you know, our hotel's like in walking distance, so it's perfect. We're just there for the weekend walking around. And then we get back to our room, and then we start fighting, and like intensely fighting. And like we, like, who hasn't been a couple that fights and like gets into tiffs, whatever, but like this just was like oddly aggressive for both sides. And like, again, like we had it a little bit before in the hotel room, left and we're fine. And then we came back and we're just fighting like cats and dogs. Like we just, I don't know, it was weird. And then David just like dramatically, like we're still going at it, and we shouldn't, like the fight, I don't even remember what the fight was even about. It was just aggressive. And then he ends up like slamming the door, leaving. Very dramatic.
And I can't see him doing this.
It's
like
not
he is
really
not
a
the
David
type.
move to slam the door dramatically and leave, but he slams the door dramatically and leave. And I just like get into the bed grumpy, like angry, like whatever. And at the end of the bed, I just hear this like low guttural growl, like from the room next to us. Like the bed, at the foot of the bed was like a dresser, and then the wall to the next room. And I just hear this low guttural growl, and I'm like, no, thank you. And like,
we're out of here.
But I'm still so mad that I'm like not even like really putting it together. And then David comes back, and like we calm down, and like everything's fine. And then I think it was the next day, we see like some commotion outside, and it might have even been that night. I can't quite remember, but like we see some commotion outside, and they're pointing to the room next to us, the room that
you heard the growl.
Exactly. Where the growl was coming in. I mean, it sounded like it was at the foot of the bed, like full on. It sounded like, and it sounded like a man growling at me. It wasn't wasn't an animal. It was like a man, like it was a human. And
Kavika. Sorry.
He's getting into it.
He's also possessed. Okay, Barb, come here. Come. I want to hear the story. All right, keep going.
So we notice this commotion of like this group of people, and they're pointing to the room next to us. And then we go downstairs and we ask, and we find out that the room next to us is like full on haunted. Not only that, it's known as being one of the most like haunted places in San Diego. Like it's one of the key places that this walk around haunted tour does, and they point out the room, and of course we got the room next to it. So I don't know, like
we're gonna have to go stay in that room.
Oh my gosh.
But what is interesting is that a lot of times like that is like a known side effect of like hauntings and ghosts, is that you will start getting a little bit more angsty, arguments will kind of come out, you get kind of like irritable, and like things happen.
And that was like, and it
like
was
Kavika right now.
It's funny because Potato, I don't know if you guys can hear it, but like Potato
also doing the same thing,
making it's also a little bit past dinner time, so I'm sure she's like, excuse me, Mom, stop podcasting, start feeding.
I know. That's interesting though, that like your growl sounded like a guy, like a male.
Human.
Mine did not. Mine sounded like ungodly, like unearthly, like not a human could not have made that noise.
Really?
Yeah. Like it literally sounded like it was coming from literal underground, loudest growl, like just so like gutturally, like it.
Oh no. What we ended up learning about the haunted room next door, it was a guy that lived there because it used to be a place you could live full time, like you could rent out rooms. It wasn't a hotel, and he would bring up working women up there, and he like I think he killed them or like it was some kind of thing like that. So I really do think it sounded like an angry man, and then it turns out an angry man haunts that room. So I do think that's creepy. It was so scary, and I'm not someone again like. I just love a good story, and I tend to just be like, oh, tell me everything. But like, I always take everything with a little bit of grain of salt. But like, there was nothing to make that noise. Like, it made no sense. And it was so like out of body. The feelings of anger we felt was just so strange. So strange.
Well, EMF, here we come.
I know. We'll go to that room and send
that room. No. Well, no, too. And also, like, Trent and I have been kind of at each other's throats the last few days, too. Just after, like, right before and then right after seeing it. And I'm like, I'm going to blame my bad attitude on the Hat Man, but you need to calm down, sir. But it is weird. Like, it is like it's a known thing. Yeah,
it is definitely, adds an extra layer of like, you know, it's one thing to maybe interact or like to have like a very physical experience, but like to go through something and not even be conscious about it is like a whole other level of like, nope, big nope, pass.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anything you learned today? Any final thoughts from...
Honestly, if a vampire smells, stay away. Any dude that smells like death can leave. Pass. Quick pass. It's a no for me. Thank you. Sage dates are always a good time. And other than that, I kind of wish I could give you guys more on the Hat Man. Like I do want to apologize. I wanted to get into like the very deep like details of it. I just could not. So maybe when we're in a better place later on, we can do that. Like I am interested, but also at the point where I'm like, maybe I just don't want to know.
Yeah,
so,
fair.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go down like a whole TikTok deep dive, though, he is there for you.
I can't believe he's on TikTok. I think my other takeaway of the day is get yourself a good Amazon Prime deal for a vacuum, because you could also use it to vacuum up the spirits.
I'm telling you, the little green machine by Bissell. Honestly, it took all the stains out of my carpet and got rid of the Hat Man. So I highly recommend.
A glowing
it was
review.
Like $87.
Our takeaways of the day: sage dates are good for a relationship. Get a Prime deal vacuum to help you with demons and ghosts.
And EMF readers are a great birthday present.
Done. Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
We'll see you when we come back and haunt you.